morning, Garland Nixon here with Laith Marouf. It's Tuesday morning. A lot of things going on. A lot we got to talk about. Let's talk. Good morning, Garland Nixon here with Laith Marouf. We got lots to talk about on a Tuesday morning. Don't forget, first and foremost, go to Laith's website, which is freepalestine.video. That's freepalestine.video. That's where they're really building. They're doing a lot of good work there, a lot of stuff from the ground, and it is English language. There's a lot of good work that's done in that region, but oftentimes it's not in English language. So we really need to get info and accurate, good information and coverage out of there. Freepalestine.video. When you go to that website, make sure you donate. And whether you can or can't donate, share it on all your social media platforms. And in the post, put a little recommendations that people continue to support freepalestine.video. And also they become monthly subscribers. Being a monthly subscriber is important. If you're going to do a bigger a donation as opposed to a smaller one that's monthly, do the smaller one that's monthly. The money that's continuing to come in is what really helps them. So become a monthly subscriber over at freepalestine.video. All right, Laith, we got a lot to talk about. Let's start here with something that's of interest, something that, there's lots of things to, make you feel down, but the Ansar Allah apparently is, boy, they're knocking down the old U.S. drones. It makes me wonder what kind of anti-aircraft abilities they have, things of that nature. But what do you think? What's the latest with that?
Yeah, I mean, we were just hearing the news that they shot down the 9th MQ-9 drone. Each one of those drones is around $30 million. So we're reaching the $300 million target. It's a huge cost. It's probably the biggest cost for the Americans, other than the maintenance of their presence in the area. And in terms of what air defenses they're using, they are using SAM 7s and something like the S-200s. But because these air defenses are stationed on top of the highest mountains in the region, they can shoot down anything, that is flying very high because of the position of their air defenses. And that's amazing. Geography does determine military reality. And here we see how the geography of Yemen, whether it's its mountains, providing this air defense capabilities with cheaper air defenses that can reach higher locations, and or its coastline that is allowing it to dominate the American Navy in the Arabian Sea and the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. That's, again, the power of geography in setting the course of history and determining military, realities on the ground. And I would say, looking at, Yemen, the speeches that came out of Sayyid Abdel Malik al-Houthi, the leader of Ansar Allah, over the last week, we should be expecting new surprises as promised. And we have, these things now have become a norm to see Ansar Allah shoot down MQ-9s or chase away the American Navy. So what are they going to be surprising us with? That's something that we should be all joyfully waiting for.
Well, those old, I think it's like S-200 systems. These are systems from like the 60s, Russian, Soviet systems from like the 60s that are able to, and even the missiles that they've been using so far, the drones that they've been using so far, they're subsonic, they're slow, things of that nature. And they've been able to effectively using what is not the highest of technology to really defeat the U.S. in a naval and air conflict. The U.S. apparently, U.S. UK bombed some other positions, but it doesn't seem to bother Ansar Allah because, I mean, it's a mountainous region and there's not a lot of infrastructure to bomb in the first place. They've been bombed by the Saudis for 5, 6, 7 years. Here's the interesting thing that I think about. You know, one of the things that the Russians have said is that if the U.S. keeps, does long range strikes, they're going to give some really nasty weapons to some U.S. adversaries. Even if they had S-300s, which is probably better than anything the U.S. have, with what the Ansar Allah is able to do with the technology they have, if any entity were to say we're going to arm them with our latest technology, the U.S. would just have to leave the area because they wouldn't be able to bomb, they wouldn't be able to fly, they wouldn't be able to come their ship. I mean, at this point, if there were a real regional conflict and Ansar Allah was then, it wouldn't surprise me if they already have stuff they're not using. It would be, it's already lopsided, but it would be a total domination.
Oh yes, oh yes. I mean, we heard the head of the U.S. Central Command naval forces that are now in the region, saying to the Zionists, to the Israelis, that the United States cannot maintain this presence forever to defend the colony. So that's a statement saying that, hey, we're overstretched right now. We're spending money like crazy, just waiting for the response of Iran that hasn't come yet. We're on the highest alert. And at the same time, according to the leadership of the U.S. Navy, what they have lived through in this battle with Yemen is the most intense naval battle that they have had to contend with since the end of the World War II. So this is a huge accomplishment that Yemen is caused so much hardship and damage to the American Navy that they would admit this. Usually they would hide these realities. And also, it's clear right now that the American Navy has been defeated. There is no way for the U.S. to win a battle against Yemen in the seas. And this is why this morning, after Yemen shot down that MQ-9, the American and the UK Air Force bombed Taiz on the coast of Yemen, on the Red Sea, and actually targeted a school and hit a school bus. So what is the Americans' response, the Western response to their military defeat in Yemen is the same response that the Zionists have for their military defeat against the Palestinians in Gaza, which is to massacre civilians. That's the only thing that the West, its militaries, the whole empire is good for, massacring civilians. They weren't able to defeat the Iraqi resistance. They weren't able to defeat the Taliban in Afghanistan. And now they're not able to defeat Yemen nor the resistance in a concentration camp called Gaza.
Right. And when you say to an adversary, I can't keep this up for so long, you just told them, as if they didn't already know, what their victory is. Resistance to empire. The only way to beat these gigantic armies historically has been to fight longer than they can fight. And that's why empires lose so frequently when they face an organized resistance. And when you're in the Muslim world, there's a reason they call it the Muslim world, because they live there and they have been for many, many thousands of years. They're not going anywhere. So they don't have to come in and you're coming to them. It's extremely expensive for a country that has significant economic troubles, that has troubles all over the world. And I think that Israel has dragged the U.S. into a conflict that is one of the things that's destroying the U.S. empire. One of many, but one of the significant things. Let me add this. Iran demonstrated in April that the U.S., forget Israel, that the U.S. Air defense systems are worthless and can easily be, destroyed. Missile defense is worthless. And now Ansar Allah is demonstrating that the U.S. military, the U.S. Navy is nothing but a bunch of targets sitting out there waiting to be hit. So to me, if you look at what Ansar Allah and what Iran has been able to do is expose the truth about the military, the U.S. military, that it really is a paper tiger.
Oh yes, and I'm glad you brought up the financial costs. I mean, right now we know that just in the last year, the U.S. national debt at least doubled, if not tripled. We're talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars of national debt just going berserk because of this war in Gaza, the genocide in Gaza, and the war in Ukraine, but more likely because of the war in Palestine. The U.S. is sending weapons and some special forces training or whatever trainers to Ukraine. It's not deploying its whole military and navy and intelligence, whatever, to fight the war on the ground on behalf of Ukraine. It's doing that on behalf of the Zionists. And this is now becoming the most costly war, not only for the Zionists, it's the most costly war for the U.S., since forever. We don't have the numbers, of course, clearly, so I'm not going to declare it the most expensive war period. But clearly, if the national debt of the U.S. doubled in this year, there's something to look at. And these are the announced numbers. This is not the dark money that is funding this war. There's all the looted oil of Iraq, Syria, and Libya, and Yemen is part of this dark money that it doesn't register in the American budget and actually finances American intelligence and military activities off the book. So you could imagine how much this war is really costing. And Yemen continuing the way they are, the whole axis of resistance continuing with this war of attrition, most likely will collapse not only the Israeli economy, but all of the Western economies. And this is why we are now getting to this point of dangerous moment as we approach closer and closer to the American elections. Here, and all the fronts are, intensity of the battle is increasing. Whatever president wants to get elected in the U.S. is going to have to contend with the issue of Gaza, even though that they're trying to escape from it and not talk about it during the campaign. I think we will be in a regional war or a bigger situation of battle before even the elections happen. So in the next 45 days, everybody should be expecting that this war will reach scales that we haven't seen yet, and it will be the number one issue on the ballot come November.
I think you're right. I also understand along the border something happened where, and again, I think this is part of a broader issue too. We spoke a week or so ago about some U.S. Marines in Turkey who went ashore, were wandering around, and the Turkish people were so furious. Not a Turkish a group or just civilians on the street were so angry they fell upon the two soldiers, put bags over their heads, and they weren't killed or anything like that. And now we're seeing that there was some kind of an operation on a border, I believe. I'm not sure, Egyptian border.
No, Lebanon, the Jordanian border.
Talk about Jordanian. Okay, yeah. Okay, what happened there? And was this person an operative or just an angry? What do we know anyway about this?
So this is a truck driver. Remember, the Israelis, with the help of the Emiratis, the Saudis, and the Jordanians, create an alternate route for the delivery of goods to the Zionists to replace the blockade that Yemen has conducted on the Red Sea. So there's this supply line that goes through the Emirates, Saudi, Jordan, and then crosses into the border into occupied Palestine. So this is a truck driver, a Jordanian truck driver, who was crossing with goods with part of these convoys, and somehow he managed to smuggle a personal gun past all the security. And when three border agents of Israel approached his truck, he just pulled the gun and shot them point blank in the head, the three of them. Done for. So, of course, this is the biggest breach of security that the Israelis had to contend with on the border of Jordan since 2 years ago, when during the war of 2022, thousands of Jordanians crossed the border, to help the Palestinian people there. So now what is this action have as a result? On the one hand, the Israelis freaked out. They, arrested all the truck drivers coming through the border, humiliate them, beat them, walked over their heads, kicked them in the faces. These are all the Jordanian truck drivers that bring the daily vegetables and goods to the Israelis. Without the deliveries from Jordan, the economy of Israel would collapse, and the effects of the Yemeni blockade will have much more effect. So, so for them to mistreat the Jordanian drivers that were crossing, this is now going to have an effect on these drivers. These drivers are probably not going to want to do this job again. Secondly, the Israelis are so crazy that they closed all the borders with Jordan. So, this is one border. They could have left another border crossing open and somehow continued their own supply route. So now they're harming themselves, the Zionists, by closing all the borders. And finally, we could see the effect inside Jordan. The minute this operation was announced, there was thousands of people out in the street celebrating, and they held a martyr hero procession in the middle of the old city of Amman, the capital of Jordan. Hundreds of thousands of people out, fireworks, all the sweet shops in Jordan. They had people standing outside their stores and giving out free sweets to anybody that passes in commemoration of this martyr and his operation. So we could say, Jordan, by the way, is having an election. Parliamentary election is useless, but they were supposed to have an election now, and we could say that this Jordanian truck driver really won as the prime minister of Jordan. Without going into the election, he's representing truly the feelings of the people in the street. So now the Jordanian military, Jordanian security forces are freaking out because he set an example for a lot of other Jordanians that could follow. And because of how much the streets are boiling, people are really pissed off at how the government is dealing with the situation in Gaza and the war in general, that this is now a danger that the Jordanian government hasn't felt since September 1970, when the Palestinians in the refugee camps in Jordan had an uprising and only ended with a mass massacre of Palestinian refugees. It's called Black September, that 1970. So Jordan is being destabilized because of this action of one truck driver. Israel is shooting itself in the foot and is cutting its own supply route. And the final thing that I would say about this operation is the border crossing between Jordan and the West Bank, where it happened. It's called the Karama crossing, or the King Hussein Bridge, or the Alimbi Bridge. And the name of the area, the Karama, it means dignity. Okay, Karama means dignity in Arabic. And in 1978, the Israeli military attempted to occupy this area and invaded. And a Jordanian military general on the ground called the king of Jordan, King Hussein, the dead one, and said, hey, the Israelis are crossing, I'm going to confront them. And the king of Jordan, Hussein, told him, do not, let them occupy it. And so he hung up the phone, cut the wire, and ordered his men to fight the Israeli invaders and defeated them. And that was the only time that Jordan ever won in a military battle against the Zionists. And that general is the great uncle of this truck driver that just committed this operation. And they come from the largest Bedouin tribe in Jordan. So this means now it's not only about the Palestinian Jordanians or Jordanians with some Palestinian background in their family. No, this is the Jordanian Bedouins that form the backbone of the Jordanian military and security forces. And this is a family that is very well known for its rebellion against bad decisions by the royal family. And now it got reassured this reality that now the Jordanian people are not happy about their leadership and the decisions that they're taking, and it could any moment end their collaboration or listening to the leadership in Jordan. It's a very, very important day that passed this week.
Syria, the Israelis have attacked Syria, and at the same time, I understand that Saudi Arabia has said that they're reopening their embassy in Damascus. What do we need to know about Syria?
Yeah, so this was the largest air attack on Syria since the beginning of this war. In fact, probably since a decade at least. And so there was multiple aircraft flying over Lebanon that fired on the coastal area of Syria, on Tartus, the second largest port city, and on Misyaf area, where it's in the mountains behind Tartus, and it's also where the Syrian military technologies complex is. This is a military complex that has been attacked tens of times by the Israelis over the last decade, but it's still continuing to function. There's at least 30 somewhat civilians and a few military officers that manned air defenses that were martyred, and there's tens that are injured. So this was a large attack, and clearly it was targeting areas that, like Tartus, that are considered safe. The coastline of Syria hasn't seen any fighting during the Wahhabi cult invasion and/or by the Zionists. So now to see Tartus being targeted, where the main oil refineries of Syria is and where the main deliveries of oil products happen, this is an alarming thing. The other such thing is that, of course, the Israelis are really pissed off because Syria continues to deliver military technologies and military weapons to both Hezbollah in Lebanon and the resistance in Gaza. As we are speaking right now, the Syrian military is delivering weapons into Gaza. People don't understand how much work needs to be done to do this, and also don't understand that it's still continuing amidst this genocide. And so without the Syrian military complexes actually supplying and being the backbone of military weapons for the axis of resistance here, things wouldn't be where we are today. And I want to say, of course, many people would love that Syria responds. And of course, this is, just to be clear, what the Israelis want. They don't want Syria to be able to continue supplying weapons to Hezbollah and to the resistance in Gaza. And that can only happen if Syria enters war. And so Syria is holding back because it needs to be the safe zone, the back base for all the axis of resistance in this region. Some people will laugh at Syria why it's not responding, but honestly, what if they do respond and Syria becomes the punching bag? What is going to happen to the resistance in Lebanon and/or in Palestine? They wouldn't be able to survive without Syria. And you mentioned the embassy, right? The
Yes.
Saudi embassy. I'm sorry about that. I forgot it for a second. Yeah, I mean, you could see how all of the Gulf countries that funded the Wahhabi death squads that came to destroy Syria are right now trying to return, because the existence of these made-up states in the Gulf and their unnatural taking of space as a representative of the Arabic people. This only can happen if the original capitals of the Arabic world, Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, Algiers, Sana'a, are out of the picture, are destroyed, are humiliated. Then and only then can the Bedouin tent dwellers in Emirates become the leaders and the representatives of the Arabic world. Now with Syria coming back from the decade of massacres, and now that Gaza and the resistance in Lebanon and Yemen and so forth are becoming the only true representative of the Arabic people, it is now returning. Damascus is returning to its rightful place as one of the oldest and longest serving capital of all the Arabic people. Damascus was the capital of the Umayyad Empire for like 300-400 years. You know, was the capital of the Arabic people. It is the oldest continuously inhabited capital of any nation on this planet. So the Saudis begrudgingly have no choice but to come back, as now their social credit is collapsing and their importance. Nobody talks about Saudi Arabia or thinks about Saudi Arabia these days, but a year and a half ago, it was the only thing that everybody wants to talk about. Now it's irrelevant, Saudi Arabia, and has no choice but to come crawling on its knees to Damascus to come back and open an embassy.
Wow, that's interesting. I was going to ask you about the resistance, the various resistance. You know, you've got the Syrian and the. I understand that the Iraqi resistance has again struck Israel. What do we need to know about the various resistance forces?
Yes, Iraq and the resistance there continues to fire on the Zionist colony. They hit Haifa and they hit Eilat over the last 4 days. But you know what? Although everybody thinks that they are firing from Iraq, they're actually firing from Syria. That's another thing about Syria. You know, they don't have to tell you where they're firing the Iraqis. They're firing their drones from. They just show you a video of a desert and it's coming out from there. Well, that's the Syrian desert inside Syria. The Iraqi resistance doesn't want to fire actually from inside Iraq because of the problems with the American military and how it, you know, we saw how the last time the Americans and the Israelis bombarded the Iraqi resistance there and their leadership. So everybody's using Syria as the back base and as the camouflaged, unannounced, actually hub of resistance. Syria is the hub of the resistance, and the Iraqi groups like Hezbollah Iraq are firing their drones from inside Syria, and that's freaking out the Americans. They don't want all of this activity to happen in Syria, but here we go. Syria is the backbone. The resistance in Lebanon over the last 72 hours have changed their tactic. There is a significant change that hasn't been discussed yet, but we've seen a drastic reduction in the number of Hezbollah martyrs. Okay, so that means that there's been a tactical change on the ground. How the missions are being conducted has changed there, and at the same time, we saw the firing of actual missiles, rockets. Not only Katyushas or the Falak rockets, these are short range, they're not guided, but they're good in aim and so on. But now we're seeing actual missiles firing from Lebanon and many swarms of drones at the same time. Just last night, Hezbollah fired close to 120 missiles, as well as 3 or 4 different swarms of drones. And this is almost matching the highest intensity of attacks by Hezbollah when they retaliated to Israel 2 weeks ago. They fired 320 missiles in that day. So now we're seeing that it's almost becoming the norm, that high intensity. And this is also leading to the Israelis having to use more and more their air force in the fight in South Lebanon on the border of North Palestine, and exposing their air force to the air defenses of Hezbollah, which yesterday Hezbollah chased some of these jets and drones. And it's also forcing the Israelis to basically divert some of their air force, a bigger chunk of their air force, to the defense of their northern borders. And this is, again, putting it in the bigger picture of us getting closer and closer to the elections in the United States and the eventuality here on the ground of a total military collapse of Israel. This is why we are seeing the intensity of the fight grow and grow.
Turkey. Turkey has applied to join BRICS. I think that means something. Erdogan, you know how he is. He always tries to, as we say as a baseball metaphor in the U.S., to run the second base while still keeping all of his feet on first, both feet on first. Interesting character. Your thoughts on Turkey and with Turkey joining BRICS, what that means?
Yeah, I mean, look, Turkey. I personally still don't trust a person like Erdogan.
He's Erdogan, of course.
And I used to watch baseball when Montreal had a team, the Expos, right? I used to go to the field, so I know what you're talking about. But you know, he's gonna disappear like the Montreal Expos, right?
And where did they end up? In Washington, D.C., I think, didn't they? So maybe that's where he'll retire.
Yes, he'll retire there, exactly. So once the league yanks his membership, so he's at this moment, this is where the problem, and I think most people in the Syrian leadership, the Iranian leadership, and even the Russian leadership, who Iran and Russia are still trying to court Erdogan and Turkey, although they know the reality. But all of them know that this is a very, almost impossible thing to achieve, to have Erdogan and or Turkey fully flip. Remember, just like in the last 2 weeks, there was again renewed talks about Turkey normalizing its relationship with Syria, and then we saw last week the president of Syria saying, well, it's going to be very easy to normalize this relationship. All they have to do is withdraw their troops, and once that reality comes back to us again, we see a lull in these supposed negotiations with Syria, and because Turkey can't really withdraw its troops without an American approval. The other thing is that Turkey is the largest base of American nuclear weapons in the zone between Asia and Europe. And so here's a country that, without the presence of American nuclear weapons there, it will be hard for the US to hit, for instance, Moscow with a nuclear weapon, or hit Iran with a nuclear weapon without firing it from the homeland. So I think it's hard to imagine Turkey flipping. And but the pressure on the street, as you mentioned, that story of the 2 American sailors that almost got lynched. Look at what happened in Jordan. At any moment, there could be a Turkish free spirit, free person that, with a personal gun, walks into an American base and shoots it up, and or goes into a Turkish port and blows up a ship, or stops the deliveries of oil from Turkey to the Zionist colony. So this is how, and this is a huge country. It's like 90 somewhat million people. So even if you have 10 radical people, they can make a huge damage, right? It's there's a bigger pool of possibility of radicalization. And it's a big country that's hard to follow up, everybody in every little town and village, what they're thinking and what they're planning. So I think it's more likely that there will be radical actions taken by Turkish citizens than Turkey flipping sides. On the issue of BRICS, yes, they want money. House slaves will run to anybody that gives them money. And so the BRICS itself will dangle its offering in front of Turkey, hope to drag them into the alliance of BRICS. And then once Turkey is in the BRICS, that is when things could become more possible for change inside Turkey, because now it's going to become more than just the relationship of Erdogan with President Putin or Iran or Syria. It's going to be a whole sections of the Turkish society that will be integrated financially, business-wise, culturally, with the rest of the BRICS. And now we will be talking about thousands of companies and hundreds of thousands of employees and so on. And that's what will push up into the leadership of Turkey and maybe force change. But you see, this is a long-term project. And even this long-term project could be disrupted at any moment. Look at Brazil, one of the founders of the BRICS. A coup happens. They remove Lula, the guy that came in almost what's his name right now?
Bolsonaro.
Yes, he almost withdrew from BRICS, right? So this is where it's a little bit, it's a long-term thing that nobody will count their chickens before they see the results.
Yeah, I think that I agree that if Turkey gets into BRICS, that changes the game, because while it is still in NATO, technically, it could become inextricably linked to these other countries, so much so that they wouldn't have to hold sway over it. It would, you know what I mean? Once it becomes completely and totally linked, and I think the U.S. empire knows that they're horrified of that. But we shall see what happens. The Mawasi massacre, I guess if I'm pronouncing that right. What happened there? I'm not familiar. I've been out of pocket for a few days. What happened? What do we need to know about that?
Well, this is another crazed action by the Zionists. It was very sad. I was watching the news last night, and here we have the Zionists doing a fire belt, attacking the Mawasi Khan Yunis tent city in the quote-unquote safe zone, and dropping 3 to 5 bunker buster 2,000-pound bombs over a tent city, and leaving 3 huge craters that are, something like 20 feet or 30 feet deep. Okay, they can't find any trace of the tents and the people that were in the tents sleeping in the middle of the night. They don't exist anymore. 50 somewhat tents with families and children inside them sleeping the night, totally wiped off the existence on this planet. And this is the second time that the Israelis attack tent cities this way in safe zones. And so it's not it's clear for anyone that is genuine and has any functioning brain cells that the strategic goal of the Zionists is the eradication, the ethnic cleansing, the genocide of the Palestinians. It's not the defeat of the military factions that are fighting them. They want to massacre and genocide the Palestinian people. And we look at how the Western governments have responded. It's like those craters in Mawasi are now where the the voice of Western media and Western elite has been buried, along with the pieces of the Palestinian civilians that are buried in the sand now. And I don't think that this is going to stop. In fact, I expect this, to become a daily occurrence. Over the last 3 months, we saw a decrease in the number of Palestinians announced martyred. Of course, we don't know because the counting didn't exist. But remember, at the beginning of this war, it was 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 Palestinians massacred a day. And in the last few weeks or months, we've seen that number come to 100, 200 a day. While the Mawasi massacre, it's definitely hundreds of people killed in it. And that's, this one is going to be hard to swallow. And I don't know, looking at the Palestinian resistance in the West Bank, the actions of Hezbollah on the border here with Lebanon, I think all of these are indicators that we're entering a new stage in this war, and things are much less predictable. And who knows where we'll be in the next 45 days.
Here's an article right here. Popular Israeli broadcasters call to erase every living being in West Gaza. And this is an English language Israeli podcast to host Nair Meninger and Eaton Weinstein, right, discussing Palestinians. And he says, if you gave me a button to just erase Gaza, every single living being in Gaza would no longer be living tomorrow. I would press it and attack it. He claimed that most Israelis would do the same. I probably agree with him. He says, full-scale war wouldn't mean that we're just in Gaza, he added. It would also mean what we're doing in Gaza, because in Gaza, and it also wouldn't mean what we're doing in Gaza, because in Gaza, maybe there's mass destruction, but there's not massive death. Right. So they just go on to say the baby that's born in Gaza is technically innocent. I would give 0, whatever. I don't care if he gets polio. So what we're seeing clearly, if you look at that, is and there may be those who are shocked by that. I'm not the slightest bit shocked. I mean, this is what they're doing. This is who they are. Anyone who sees that article that is shocked has no idea what's been going on for the last 75 years and the last, 11 months. But that is Gaza. That is 1939 Germany. That is Rwanda. That is every brutal, vicious, mindless massacre that has happened and genocide that has happened. That is it right now. And I'm glad to see that article. I'm glad to see it. Because the world needs to understand the mentality of not the people, of the entire society that they're dealing with in occupied Palestine.
Yeah, I mean, and the name of the podcast is Two Nice Jewish Boys. Can you imagine if this was two ugly Jewish boys or two nasty Jewish boys, what they would be saying, right? So, this is the most human a Zionist can be, right? If the rest of the not nice Jewish boys want to eradicate all of Arabic people, want to eradicate all of Black and African people, want to eradicate all Asian people, they just want to, because they see themselves as superior, as the chosen people, that we are all soulless bags of flesh. We are goyim to them, right? And this is the core of the problem. I've all my life I've said there's a huge difference between Judaism and Zionism. Judaism is my people's theological heritage. It brought us the anti-slavery revolt in Egypt and so forth. And Zionism is a nasty supremacist ideology. But unfortunately, this genocide in Gaza is making everybody on this planet hate on not only Zionists, but Jewish people. And it is becoming more and more difficult for people, including myself, to even think that the problem is only Zionism. You see, in the situation of the Wahhabi death cult, Al-Qaeda and ISIS, The vast majority of Muslims on this planet, 90 somewhat percent, condemned ISIS, condemned Al-Qaeda. There was not one official Muslim organization that supported Al-Qaeda or ISIS. Every Muslim organization on the planet issued statements saying that these organizations do not represent Islam and the interpretations of the Quran. But on the other hand, we have only a small minority of Jewish people in the West that are speaking out against Zionism, and all the major Jewish organizations, all the major synagogues, if not all of them, are coming out with genocidal statements on a daily basis, supporting this. So it's becoming now, it's not anymore my duty as a Palestinian to tell the world that there's a difference between Judaism and Zionism. I personally will not stop somebody that now claims that, well, this Judaism is the problem, because the official Jewish organizations and the vast majority of the Jewish populations in the West and in Israel are all supporting the death of my people, the genocide of my people. So I think it's now the responsibility of Jewish anti-Zionists not to only speak out, to take action, to confront the genocidal people within their community, okay? And if they don't take action, and I don't mean demonstrate here or carry a flag, I mean going into the offices of the Zionist lobby organizations and trashing them, going into the synagogues where a rabbi is preaching hate and kicking them out of the synagogue. If they don't take actions like this, then they are complicit. Then it is the right of people who have anti-Jewish beliefs to actually believe in those beliefs. I personally don't believe in that. But it is the anti-Zionist Jews that are not taking their responsibility and is now making everybody on this planet believe that the problem is Judaism and not Zionism. And I don't have much sympathy anymore, honestly, to tell you.
You know, I've said from the very beginning that the worst, that Zionism is the opposite of what they claimed it was. It's there to make Jewish people safer. That what Zionism has done is created an environment where people are furious at both the Zionists and even Jewish people, who are just walking the street, who completely disagree with it. What happens is the fury is that Jewish people in general, and that Zionism can create a dynamic where people take action, whether it's physical action or economic action or whatever the case may be, against Jewish people who are completely innocent because of what's happening with Zionism. It's the worst thing in this day and age that could possibly happen to the Jewish diaspora is Zionism. I'll add this. Let me add this. The U.S. empire in Ukraine, what have they been doing since the 50s, the 40s? They've been building and supporting the most extreme elements in Ukraine and throughout Eastern Europe so they could use them as a cat's paw. They've been funding neo-Nazis, supporting them, elevating them within their communities, within their countries, into the very high positions in their regions so that they could control those elements and use that against Russia, but to the detriment of the people in those countries and regions. That's the same thing as Zionism. The U.S. empire has been funding and elevating the most extreme people that they can, even in the Zionist community. Let me add this. For some time, Netanyahu has been the most hated leader that Israel has ever had. And who keeps him in power? The U.S. The U.S. is the worst enemy of the Eastern Europeans, the Ukrainians. The U.S. empire is the worst enemy of the Jewish people and even the Zionists. And might I add, I could add Taiwan. They're setting Taiwan and the Philippines up to be another Ukraine. The U.S. empire goes into these regions, blackmails or bribes the most extreme elements to the detriment of the people in those regions, in those societies, in those groups. Your thoughts?
Oh yes, oh yes. And you know what? Similarly, for a long time, people, let's say like Mercimer, were talking about the Israeli lobby and its coercion effect on American politics and so on. And I personally have been saying for decades that Israel is just a vassal state. It's a beachfront colony, a beachhead colony, whatever you want to call it. That is the Americans that control the Zionists and so on. But the behavior of the Zionists and the behavior of the media in the West and the behavior of the politicians in the West is making it hard to not believe that actually Zionist Jews control American government. It's making it impossible. They're coming out and openly whipping into shape in the public square any American politician that's moves 1 inch away from the dictate of what did they say. We're the way that all the media in the West pulled the line and propagated all this hate against the Palestinians and justified the genocide over the last 11 months makes it impossible to argue that the Zionist Jews don't control the media, right? These are things that I have fought against, people that say these things, right? So now it is up to the American public. Do they want to prove that they are in charge of their own country or that Jewish Zionists control them? And as we see from the options that they have, as Trump, Zionist controlled, or Harris, Zionist controlled, it seems like the Zionists control the politics in the U.S. And so it's almost right now reaching a point where I think because the anti-Zionist Jews are ineffective in changing realities within their community, and because the politicians in the West and the media in the West are all acting as if they are sock puppets, okay, it's becoming harder to argue that Jewish Zionists don't control these countries. And that so if there is any real patriots in the US, in Western countries, they will be rebelling against the rule by the Zionist Jews. Otherwise, they're not free. And the more this stays, the more people will believe that Jews control these countries. And this is, a threat, obviously, to anti-Zionist Jews and Jews that have no crime to be punished for. And in the moment there is a true rebellion in the West, the first people that are going to be slaughtered are the Jews. It's going to be like the situation. Yeah.
You're saying that's something that I've said that I've feared for a number of reasons. As you probably told you many times, my brother, he passed away, but he was a converted Jew, and I was like, and he said he had feared the same thing. That he said, they're doing all of these things that I don't agree with. I'm afraid I'll go to the synagogue and get blown to smithereens, or whatever the case may be. And let me add this. I would say the Zionists, but I wouldn't say Zionist Jews. Let me give you an example, especially being in the United States, seeing it. A guy named Axel Springer, I think is his name. He bought Politico, and he has this big, he's German, and he has this big, apparently empire of media stuff, right? And apparently one of the first things he says is you have to, go along with whatever Israel wants, or you can't work for me, blah, blah, blah. So there are a lot of media moguls that are not Jewish, that are every bit as fanatical as Netanyahu. Here's what I think. And keep in mind something. Again, he's German. We see what's happening in Germany. We see what's happening in the UK and with Richard Medhurst and things. So I've come to this point. I want to get your thoughts on it. the control of Zionism, the support of Zionism in the US and in its colonies, which I call them, in Europe. It's all one thing, number one. They are vassals and colonies. But number two, I think that the non-Jewish Zionists, right, see the Middle East as an important cog in US imperialism. And I think there's let's say the non-Jewish Zionists. I think they look and say, look, we're losing, my God, Africa, look at the Sahel region. And they're looking around, oh, good God, Asia, China's growing. Oh, good God, Eurasia, Russia's dominating. They're starting to look around. They're seeing the entire global South just saying, we want out, and fighting and struggling to get away. They can't hold on. And I think they're looking at this, throw this at you, as the only thing we got left is to hold on to the region with the oil. For God's sake, if we lose the region which completely from the oil, which they're losing it, that's it for the U.S. empire. Game, set, and match. And I think so. The non-Jewish Zionists it isn't about religion to them. It's about holding on to their U.S. imperial grip on those critical resources, since they're losing the uranium and the gold in the Sahel, the lithium in South America. You know what I mean? They're losing all the cheap labor in Asia. They're losing all of this other stuff. So I think the non-Jewish Zionists, they say whatever about Israel. They don't give a crap about Israel. In fact, if you look at historically, come on, Germans standing up for Israel, I think their history tells us that let me throw this in there. The very reason that Israel is there, that we're given that Israel is there, this is what we're told, is that anti-Semitism is so powerful in Europe and the US that Jewish people can't be safe here, right? And that the crescendo of thousands of years of anti-Semitism, the Holocaust in Germany, was so horrible that Jews, basically what they said is, Jewish people, get out of here. You ain't safe here. We don't want you here. Let's build another place and we'll put you over there where you can be away from us because we're so dangerous. So to me, the non-Jewish Zionists really hate Jews. And they just want that oil. Anyway, that's a lot, threw a lot at it, but your thoughts?
Yeah, you are right. Like I'm just throwing out what I think the vast majority of people are starting to think. I do 100% believe that the majority of the elite in the West hate Jews and would want them to die fighting Arabs on their behalf, and maintaining the whole region in chaos so the region doesn't develop, but all at the cost of Jewish blood. And I know, like, even in Canada, the major media moguls are Christian, Catholic, and Protestant Zionists, the British and French origins colonists.
Clapping, giving standing ovations to Nazis, giving standing ovations to semi-retired Nazis. Oh yeah, they love the Jews.
Yes. So yeah, no, it's we know the reality, me and you, but I'm saying that the public is getting more and more convinced. This is why, I look on Twitter every day, and there's open, outright anti-Jewish things being written, and it's becoming more and more normal. And I think this is a dangerous moment for the Jewish people in these countries, especially when the Western Empire collapses. They will be blaming the Jews for dragging the US and the West into this war, although the West is the one that wants this war. And we look at, you mentioned Nigeria. I just want to throw this out before we leave. Yesterday, I think, or the day before, Niger called on France to pay back 60 years of looted money and resources for the country, reparations. They also kicked out the German military. So now there's no more Western militaries on Niger's soil. So we're getting to this moment of reckoning for the West as a whole with its, if not the 500, 600 years of colonialism and genocide, at least the time since the end of World War II, which was supposed to bring liberation and anti-colonialism, and actually led to only more looting and more massacres by the West. And payback is coming. The cost is high to resist empire. It's not an easy thing. But only those who are willing to risk everything for freedom are the ones that actually get it. And the people in Niger, Mali, in Palestine, are the ones that are leading the path for this liberation for all of us on this planet.
I believe it was James Baldwin that said the worst thing a society can create is a man who has nothing left to lose. And that's what the U.S. empire did. They created vast swaths of the world that say, well, we got nothing to lose. You are oppressing us. You're taking our dignity. You're trying to take our dignity. And that's all we have left. And we'll fight for our dignity. They created the dynamic where there are vast swaths of the world who don't, you've impoverished them. What do they have left to lose? So now they have no choice but to resist. Don't forget, everybody, go to freepalestine.video. That's freepalestine.video, where Laith and his group does their really good work. It's English language stuff. Go there and check it all out. Additionally, go there, please. And if you can afford to, donate and share freepalestine.video on all your social media platforms, and put a little note with the post that asks people to go there and donate. You can become a monthly subscriber. That's a really good idea. Thanks a lot, Laith, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Talk to you soon.